Hey, I went to Europe and I was able to eat everything. My bloating was better, my energy was better, I felt good. How many of you have experienced this phenomenon? But then come back home and then start feeling like crap. I'm about to give you all the downloads on why eating is so easy in other countries, why you can eat gluten without a problem, and most importantly, how to make sure that that continues here in the United States on this episode of Heal Thyself. Hey, so listen, I went to Europe, right? And we were just vibing. I mean, like, what a beautiful place. We went to Paris, we went to London, and immediately I noticed that I was able to eat without getting bloated, without getting heartburn. You know, I tend to have a very sensitive stomach. Then I noticed it was all different types of variety of foods as I started playing around and sort of exploring if I can eat this or eat that. Some of those foods being like a little bit of gluten, right? Maybe I don't eat too much sugar, but maybe I'll have this dessert. And maybe the dessert has a little bit of gluten, right? There was a little bit of feta cheese in one of my salads. I said, okay, let me have a little bit of it, you know? And interestingly enough, the foods that I know would affect me here in the States, and I'm talking about affect me, and I know a lot of you know what I'm talking about. A lot of you can feel into this. Those foods are just, they can destroy your belly for the day and sometimes the next day, but then you go to another country and you eat those foods and you feel fine. And for me, gluten is the killer. I know I've identified this many years ago. My skin starts becoming inflamed. I had psoriasis inflamed. My belly hurts. I get brain fog. All of these things happen when I'm eating too much gluten. But for you, it might be dairy. For you, it might be certain vegetables like tomatoes or something. For you, it might be too much sugar. But regardless, I know a lot of you, and I've heard this story so many times, I didn't know it was true till I went there, go to Europe, eat, feel better, feel fine, feel less inflamed, come back in the United States, I'm back to feeling the way that I did. And, you know, a lot of reasons would come in. We start thinking about the food, and it might be the food, probably is, but there's other pieces. It's a whole picture. And I really want to paint this for you because my goal here in this episode is to provide you the information that how can I create a daily space where I'm eating foods to the best of my ability, controlling the quality such that I feel good. So first and foremost, we'll go into how the food is different. We'll go into how can that make us feel better as the quality might be a little bit different. We'll go into the gluten piece for sure. This was really interesting because I found out some stuff other than just the gluten protein being less. I found out a little bit more stuff about how the wheat's handled, how it's processed, in how it makes us feel better. And we're going to talk about other factors that are very important that play into that full picture. So foods in Europe, generally speaking, are fresher and less processed. We know that. United States is the king and queen of processed foods. And you'll find that a lot of the foods in Italy and France, in London, are seasonal foods, especially in rural areas. The more rural you go, smaller towns, the food is locally sourced, it's eaten seasonally, and produce is actually picked and brought to the restaurant at the peak of its ripeness, right? And you're eating it shortly thereafter. And that's sort of the vibe I got, right? Like, I know what it is to have food straight from a garden brought into the home, either prepared or just put together in a salad, cooked, and taste better. And it immediately tastes better. You actually have this, it's a completely different experience when you're eating closer to the time of picking than it is when even if you get organic food from a really quality, even a farmer's market, there's something different about eating it within a day. And sort of the feeling, the energy that I got out there was the same thing, especially it's being picked at its ripeness. It's maximal in nutrient content. And that really differs from what we have out here. It's more processed. There's a long shelf life that's really common. And foods are usually coming from a long distance and in that time losing nutritional value. So it's not giving us that tidal wave of, whoa, I feel really good. Not the way it is when you're picking from a garden or eating in a small seasonal place, right? So there's fewer preservatives. There's fewer additives. We love preservatives and additives in the United States. We actually go overboard. And in many places abroad, foods are made from scratch. You know, how many times have you gone to a small mom and pop restaurant, let's say in Italy, and you're eating from scratch? They made it from scratch. There's fewer chemical additives. There's fewer preservatives. That's not the way it is here, right? You're getting the starter kit and you're just adding on to it because we become so disconnected from the food. And not everyone in the United States, there's so many great chefs, but a lot of these places you're going and it's just a quick turnover. And the artificial dyes, right? There's a big difference between the dyes that we use here and the dyes that are allowed in Europe. Most of the dyes that are allowed in Europe are coming from foods. Over here, we're using synthetic ones that maybe at a low dose is safe, but we're doing it a lot. We're doing it all the time, especially in kids. We're not even really seeing how it's affecting children neurologically. That's just I have a whole episode on food dyes. Go check that out. But, there's artificial sweeteners. There's other preservatives. It's much more regulated in Europe than it is in the United States. And as a result, it's easier on our digestion, right? You're having less irritation, especially to those of you. I know a lot of you listening and viewing are sensitive. So a lot of you out there are just being like, holy moly, this is a big difference, like me. Keeping track of your health through blood tests is crucial. You got to do it every year, but it's often a hassle. I know how much of a hassle it is. That's where SiPhox comes in. I've been using their kits, and I'm going to tell you, it's the only comprehensive at-home blood testing solution out there that is top level. When I talk about SiPhox, what stands out first off is convenient. No appointments, no travel. You do everything from home. And it's not just convenient, it's the most affordable, comprehensive blood testing solution that is available. But here's what really impresses me. SiPhox doesn't just give you numbers, they provide easily digestible assessments, insights, and personalized recommendations for you. It's one of the best, most informative healthcare experiences that I've had. I'm going to tell you some specifics. SiPhox tests for key biomarkers like cholesterol, inflammation markers, hormones, and you're regularly checking these, right? So you can always keep an eye on potential health issues that you have as you track your progress, as you track your lifestyle changes. And what's really cool is SiPhox helps you take control of the disease risk and enhance your overall health span. Health span being like, I am living long and healthy and vital versus just living long and not feeling good. And they actually offer supplements tailored to your blood work to fit your goals. And if you recently had blood work done elsewhere and you're scratching your head trying to figure out results, guess what? You can upload them to SiPhox for free. They're going to give you explanations, insights, and recommendations. Plus, you can use their platform to keep all of your historical blood test results in one place. It's a great low-risk way to try out their service. I am thrilled to partner with SiPhox Health. Visit SiPhoxHealth.com/healthyself to get 20% off of your at-home blood tests and start your journey towards optimal health. That's SiPhox Health.com/healthyself. Now, we all know fish oils come from the ocean and oceans can be polluted. That is why I am happy, as always, for almost every show to tell you about Puori O3 Ultra Pure Fish Oil. They only use small fish, which typically have lower levels of contaminants, so you don't have any of those nasty burps. Sometimes, I know a lot of you know that, get from omega-3 supplements. This could mean that the oil is rancid, which you definitely don't want because it could be inflammatory to your body. When it comes to Puori O3, I've never had that problem. I've been taking it for a long time. I brought it out with me to Europe in little baggies. And what sets Puori apart is their commitment to purity and transparency. Each batch is clean, certified, and third-party tested by the Clean Label Project against more than 200 contaminants, including heavy metals and pesticides. They have a 5 out of 5 star score from IFOS certification, which measures the freshness of the oil. And here's the kicker. Every bottle of Puori comes with a QR code so you can see the results. How cool is that? I take Puori O3 every single day because I'm getting a premium, pure, and potent source of omega-3s that support my heart, my brain, my eyes, and everything else. Plus, it offers a high dose, this is a high dose, 2,000 milligram long chain omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA in the natural triglyceride form. That means you're getting the full goodness the way nature intended in a high dose. As always, I'm thrilled to partner with Puori, and they're offering an amazing deal for you, the Heal Thyself listener. You can get 20% off of their O3 Ultra Pure Fish Oil and all their other great products. I want you to go to www.puori.com/DRG. That is www.puori.com/DRG. Use my promo code DRG. You're going to get 20% off of the already discounted subscription price. That's almost a third off. You're also having a reduced exposure to allergens and sensitivities, right? People often go to Europe and feel better eating abroad because they may unintentionally just avoid allergens or food intolerances that they're eating at home. For example, we think about wheat. Wheat in Europe is processed differently. It's got fewer additives compared to the stuff we're eating out here. As a result, we're just feeling better. And I'm going to go into gluten in just a little bit because I really want to break this down, because I know a lot of people say, hey, I remember my friend who went on his honeymoon in Italy. He was in the Amalfi Coast and he was like, man, Christian, I can eat pizza, pasta. Man, I was eating ice creams and I lost weight. I was like, I can't believe that. We're just thinking about calories and moving, but like he lost weight. And I was like, okay. So that always stuck with me. And really when I had the gluten out there, I was like, I can't believe my body's not reacting literally then and days after. But we're going to go into that in a moment. You're also getting fewer hidden sugars. We always add in sugars to foods. Some foods you may not even, I did a whole post on this. I did a whole show on this. Some of the food you might not even expect, like canned soups can have a bunch of sugar, right? Like it's incredible. Like you're just thinking about some vegetables, some soups, but yeah, we love those artificial ingredients, those hidden sugars. It's less prominent out there, right? And that affects us. It adds on, right? Sugars, when you have a high amount of sugar every day, you're going to start feeling that inflammation in your system. So you might have unintentionally gone on a sugar-free detox, not even knowing it. Now, in my case, no. Trust me, please believe, I had myself some desserts after every single meal, even if it was lunch, and I was going in, but I still felt good, right? So again, less artificial sweeteners, less dyes, less preservatives. And for those of you who are sensitive with your digestion, you're going to notice a difference. And there's actually overall different agricultural and food production practices. There are stricter regulations in Europe and all the regions around when it comes to GMOs, right? Genetically modified organisms. Now, are they problematic? Maybe not. Or is the pesticide that it's being sprayed with problematic? Yep. In Europe, when it comes to pesticides, it's much more stringent than it is here. The same with antibiotics, the same with growth hormones. So different out there. So many individuals are talking about, I feel better eating abroad because they're not being exposed to this. Even if it's for a day, you'll notice a difference. If it's for a week, you'll notice a big difference. And some of that stuff is prohibited in Europe, right? Some of those pesticides. And then we think about soil health, organic farming, right? The soil here in the United States is not as nutrient dense. You listen to Zach Bush's stuff. He's talking about how our soil is poor. We need organic, regenerative farming methods, not ones that are adulterating our soil. There's barren lands that are not nutrient dense, and we think that we're going to get nutritious food and vegetables coming from there. No, it's not true. Whereas in Europe, they are regenerative, they're organic, not all places, but the maintenance of the soil is yielding nutritious crops that we're eating. That's how it has to be done. Right? Again, another reason why it's not only just inflammation, we're just feeling better because we're getting nutrient-dense food. Oftentimes, our gut microbiome is just better. And that's one of the major reasons, is because we're exposed now to different foods, different quality of foods, different bacteria, different microbial environments. It could cause a shift in the bacteria of our gut. And usually that happens in 24 hours. It's a felt experience pretty fast. And that can affect our digestion for sure. But when we have better digestion, there's less inflammation in our gut. What happens after? We're in a better mood. Right? And then you're on vacation, right? And hopefully you're with people you love and who are tolerable, then great, all the better. Then you're in the better mood. Your immune system is better, right? Traveling actually gives us the experience of exposing us to new microbes, not only in the food, not only in the water, just in the environment and breathing it. And it could just change our gut health. Diversity matters in gut health. A lot of European countries have fermented foods. It's part of their cuisine. And a lot of them are giving you this kimchi, the sauerkraut. I remember having some yogurts. They had kefir over there, miso. That's part of the traditional diet in many of these cultures. And their foods are rich in the probiotics. That's not necessarily something that we emphasize here in American cuisine. You're not going to get American cuisine where you're getting a burger, fries, and a big dollop of sauerkraut. That ain't happening. You got to do it yourself, right? So consuming these foods actually is going to make your digestion feel better. And then I think about the water. Oftentimes, the water, it varies by region, are going to naturally be more rich in minerals like magnesium, calcium, bicarbonates, which can actually be helpful in your digestion overall. in contrast to the stuff we get here, especially in the tap water, right? We're getting a lot of chlorine in our tap water, which in itself is a disinfectant that is going to disrupt our gut microbiome, leading to digestive issues. Do not drink tap water. Go listen to my water show 1 and 2. I did this 2 years ago. Fluoride, another thing that is going to disrupt your digestion. So it's just different. The water is over there, right? You're just being exposed to less ultra-processed foods. Not everywhere. I mean, when I go to Paris, I went to some of the markets. Yeah, I saw some chips there. But as I saw chips, there was a lot more fresh foods in the convenience stores, quote unquote, than ever. When I go to London, yes, they have their little mini marts. I remember I got some protein bars there when I was hungry and we were in between meals. Yeah, like it's going to be a lot of the same, but also, especially Paris. I was very impressed with Paris when I was seeing these convenience stores. I remember getting a water. I remember getting a protein bar too. But then there's just a huge array of you can actually just buy 1 fig if you want. And I did buy 1 fig just for a little snack on the go, right? It may be by you it is, but out here in LA, we don't really get a lot of that. So we have to just think about the consciousness of even these convenience stores. Yeah, the places where you can get ultra-processed foods, there was Coca-Cola there was Pepsi there, but also there was a lot more emphasis on organic produce, right? So that's just something to think about. It's not just the food, it's the consciousness. But let me go back to gluten. And this I did notice. Gluten wasn't affecting me like it does in the United States. In the United States, gluten is the thing that I asked for immediately, right? Gluten is definitely something that I know affects me. It probably affects you. If you take it out, see how it affects you. We had Dr. Shojai here on the show, and he was just talking about how he believes that everyone is affected by gluten. We just don't know it to what level. So I would actually say just remove gluten from your diet, wheat, barley, rye, all the byproducts, and see how you feel. But this is going to be interesting. Listen up. The difference between the gluten sensitivity in the United States and Europe is actually a topic. A lot of people, I mentioned my friend, this is an ongoing thing that people are talking about. And there's several factors why people experience fewer symptoms with gluten in the United States versus Europe. First, let's think about wheat varieties. Did you know this? In the United States, American wheat, particularly hard red wheat, which we use a lot of, contains a higher gluten content because it's actually bred to produce higher yields and stronger dough, which is ideal for mass production of bread and processed foods. Thus, it's producing higher gluten content. So if you're sensitive and you're eating gluten out here, you're most likely getting that red wheat with higher gluten made for higher yields, and it's going to affect you. Whereas in Europe, they use softer wheat, especially like spelt, einkorn, a lot of those ancient ones. And these ancient grains, they actually have less gluten, and they're easier for some people to digest. Additionally, when they're out here making these breads, they're actually using techniques like sourdough fermentation. That's more common in Europe than it is out here. I've seen some Instagrams out here. People are doing some sourdough breads and everything. But the fermentation process is actually going to break down gluten proteins and make it more digestible. There's going to be gluten in there, but it's going to be more digestible. The thing that I knew of was the farming and pesticide use. Glyphosate in the United States is a big problem. It's just a problem. It's a pesticide, and it affects our gut microbiome. It affects our cells. And it's widely used in agriculture. It's one of the many pesticides, but this one's pretty egregious. A lot of lawsuits too against Monsanto Bayer. Although it's not applied directly to the crops when it's growing, it's actually used as a desiccant. It's a drying agent before harvest. And these residues will remain in the food. And it's going to affect people digestively when they're eating wheat. So how much, I can't answer this question, but how much of percent is the gluten content that is affecting you versus the pesticide content that is affecting you? A very important question that we have to really look at when we talk about gluten intolerance in Europe versus America. And the European Union has stricter regulations in pesticide usage, including glyphosate. And they limit the use of these chemicals. And thus, we have a reduced potential for gut irritation caused by these chemicals. So now people are able to eat gluten a little bit easier. And who knows, maybe they come from Europe to the United States, they eat gluten and it's a different process. It's a different experience. The bread making process in the United States often uses something called a fast rise method. And that's added gluten to speed up the process. And this results in basically bread with higher gluten concentration, but you're getting more bread and you're getting it quicker, but more gluten, often difficult to digest. Whereas in Europe, when they make bread, especially in France and Italy, they use a process called slow fermentation, like the sourdough I was talking about. And this actually allows for natural enzymes and bacteria to start breaking down some of the gluten and is going to make bread easier for you to eat. No wonder I was able to eat more bread. Sourdough fermentation is going to lower the glycemic index, reduce the amount of gluten in the final product, so it's going to be more tolerable. And the last one, additives and processing out here. In the United States, we love using gluten as a filler or a binding agent in any processed foods. So a lot of these processed foods actually have gluten in itself. You're being exposed in small amounts every single day, and then you're eating bread or pasta in a bigger amounts in that meal. And that's going to lead to overall gluten consumption, thus overall gluten sensitivity over time. And there's a heavy reliance on processed foods in the United States. We know that. We're the king and queen of it. So it can exacerbate gluten sensitivity. Whereas in Europe, people tend to consume less ultra-processed foods overall. So gluten is less commonly added as a filler in different products. So you're getting whole, fresh ingredients. That's much, much less. And, I think about all these things and it's like, wow, we're living in a place where we're wanting to get things really fast and we don't care about the end yield. It's like in Europe, food is an art, but here it's just a end profit goal. It's kind of sad, right? And when we think about the standards, it's like the legal standards for gluten labeling is different in the United States. It's different in Europe, right? So, when we think about in the US, gluten-free foods, they contain fewer than 20 parts per million of gluten. But then there's the risk for cross-contamination and leaving trace amounts of glutens and leaving a trace amount of gluten. But in Europe, they have really strict gluten-free labeling requirements because, and I saw it in a restaurant, they're really strict about if you're experience gluten, that they're going to make sure that it's isolated, your meal, it's protected. And as a result of these stricter gluten-free labeling requirements, when you eat gluten-free in Europe, right, we have gluten-free requirements here in the United States, but it's less strict. In Europe, when you eat gluten-free, you're eating gluten-free. It's a big difference. So now we have the picture of the food. We have the picture of the gluten. Now you know why this food is different than the United States. But I want you to think about the other important factors. And people don't talk about this enough. And this is really, and this is my favorite part because I love talking about like mindfulness and nervous system. But you're on vacation and you're eating relaxed. You're eating mindfully. You have a slower pace, right? You're actually eating the way life intended you to. Many countries that you go to in Europe, especially, I've seen it in France, I've seen it in London, slower, leisure, social connection, cultural engaging, right? Italy, Spain, France, I know you've experienced this, right? They eat over several hours, give the digestive process time, right? Allowing yourself to chew, digest, right? Not just hounding down your food and going to the next thing. That's how we do it out here. It's a cultural thing. The portion sizes are smaller, which was crazy for me because I eat a lot. That was crazy for me. I had to get sometimes two dinners. Yes. I remember when I asked for 2 breakfasts. The lady looked at me like I was crazy because it just wasn't enough food. And we were walking like 30,000 steps a day and I was hungry. That's why I said I was stopping getting protein bars because I just needed to eat. And the portion sizes I noticed are a lot smaller. But I did notice this too. When I was in Paris and London, I looked around. I didn't really see obese people. People were mostly in shape, right? Maybe some skinny fat people, but no one was really obese, inflamed, carrying too much fat, right? It's really was an interesting phenomenon. I was talking about this with my girlfriend. We were just looking around and we just noticed we didn't really see anyone obese. And it's a matter of this portion size is different. They're eating quality food at smaller portion sizes and it makes a big difference. On top of that, it tends to be just European food is just overall better composed. And you have, not only the whole grains of fresh vegetables, the healthy fats, the lean proteins, that's going to be associated with reduced inflammation. You're getting less sugar. But let's go back to this state of like stress and mental state that you're in. When you're on a lower stress level, especially when you're traveling, we know that stress is a huge contributor to IBS, acid refluxes, bloating. When you're traveling abroad, you're taking a break. You're breathing. You're in the European consciousness of eating slower anyway. You're walking everywhere after meals, which is essential. That's why I say if you're in the United States, you want to continue feeling good like you did in Europe, obviously avoid the gluten, but God, go for walks and see how you notice how much better you feel after every meal because you're putting yourself into a parasympathetic state and you're actually sucking up all that sugar into the muscles. But parasympathetic state is really important. And you're in that for the most part. You might be traveling with your kids. There might be a handful. You might be traveling with a partner. Then you go, why did I go on this vacation with him or her? I really hate this person. That's a different story. But for most people, they're off of work. They're mostly off of their phone and they're pretty present. And the psychological impact of being on vacation when you're like that is big. You're just relaxing. You have freedom. Adventure's there. Oh, adventure. Well, that's what we're made for. We're made to be curious. We're made to look at what's on the other side. We're made to explore. This is lifting your mood already. You're relaxing yourself. And this has a direct impact on your digestion and how food is perceived and processed. Don't forget about the mind body, right? And it's the placebo effect that just like you have a day that is exploring and fun and sounds and new and novelty, and you're eating, that's actually enhancing your overall mood, well-being. You're in a state of parasympathetic. Of course, you're going to digest your food better. You're in a state of calm. You're in rest and digest. And when the vagus nerve is stimulated in this state, you are releasing more digestive enzymes. You're releasing more stomach acid. You're releasing more bile. That's breaking down carbs, proteins, and fats. You're increasing blood flow to your organs, right? Now you're increasing nutrient absorption. You're getting more of that blood to break down stuff. You're increasing peristalsis. Your intestines are actually moving. They're moving. You're not constipating more because your intestines are moving. They're breaking down food when you're in a calm state. It's aiding in digestion. You're improving all that nutrient absorption. So of course you're feeling good because you're getting all those nutrients in your body. This is how we're supposed to eat. You're reducing inflammation, right? You're not in that stress sympathetic, I have to survive and go on to the next thing. I don't want you to reduce the importance of mindfulness. We talked about the foods, the pesticides, the gluten, the ultra processed ingredients, the food colorings, all matter. And so does eating mindfully. And if you take anything away from this podcast today, it's to eat mindfully. That means no phone. That means quiet. Even if you're in a place that get some noise-canceling headphones, put them on in the middle of your workspace and eat your food, but be quiet. Stop being bothered by people. Be with your food and notice how much better your gut issues are. Seriously. And we know that when you're in a survival state, your microbiome is not going to be happy. It's going to reduce the diversity. It's going to promote the growth of harmful bacteria. But when you're in a state of calm, you're supporting your gut. This is critical for digestion. It's critical for nutrient absorption. It's critical for overall gut health. You don't want to be in fight or flight. You don't want to be diverting blood away from your intestines into your muscles. You want to actually have digestive enzyme production, right? You want to make sure your body's ready for breaking down and absorbing. The physical activity, again, is a big thing. I want you to go for walks after you eat and notice how when you're walking in cities or walking in nature, you're actually connected. You're moving your body more. Go connect to people. Have a Sunday dinner. If you don't have a Sunday dinner, invite one set of friends. And then maybe the next week, invite another set of friends. Start having a ritual where you have community and you actually feel good and safe. And you're eating for not 20 minutes, for 30 minutes. Have a meal. Have a big meal and have it over time. Take 4 hours to have a lunch dinner with your friends. Notice how you feel. It's going to affect your mental health for the better, right? Don't forget to walk, do some good outdoor activities when you can, go be in a mindful place. And I want you to just think about this. It's like, if you want to bring Europe back home to the United States, just think about the culture for food, right? Food is not just nourishment. Food is social connection. And it goes back to what I said. Many of these cultures, they're tying their food experience to family, to community, to tradition, right? It is a time for social connection. This is when you focus. This is when you connect, right? Everybody has their work, everybody has their lives. But one of the things that impressed me the most, especially in France, was after work hours until 11 o'clock at night, every restaurant, every cafe, and every bar was full. And there was people sitting on these small little tables, shoulder to shoulder with the table next to them, and they were just laughing. They were connecting. They were talking. Some people were smoking cigarettes and talking to their friend. But I bet you that person smoking the cigarettes is going to have a healthier life than the person in the United States who feels lonely, right? They are connected in community, and you cannot take that away from anyone. Community, connection, especially over food, is the remedy to feeling good in your body. So these attitudes are big. So bring that back. You want to bring some other stuff back? Bring back seasonal eating. Stop eating blueberries in the middle of the winter. Look for what foods are seasonal to where you are, or foods that are seasonal to where your genetics point to, right? Just eat with the world. And notice, I did a show, go back on my seasonal eating show. 2 years ago, I talked about seasonal eating and how your microbiome gets really happy when you're eating in the rhythm of nature. And that's that. I love Europe. I really do. I got to get back out there. So shout out to Europe. Shout out to the great food. Shout out to the great consciousness around food. Shout out to the strict standards on pesticides and food dyes and all that ultra processed crap. And America's got some work to do, but guess what? You now have the codes. Write them down. Start practicing them. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to listen to Heal Thyself. I really appreciate you. I really do. Thank you.